What historical figure inspires you?
That's a great question. So I thought a lot about, a lot of folks. I've read a lot lately of Colonel Billy Mitchell, and I would pick him. And I'll tell you why. One, he had the most important courage there is, and that's moral courage. To look leaders in the eye and tell them what they needed to hear, maybe not what they wanted to hear. And number two, it was his ability to see the air and maritime domain differently, to push the envelope in both training and concept and ideas, and to, in many ways, revolutionize. I think he was an individual that's ahead of his time. And as I give professional development talks, or I talk to folks every once in a while, I say, hey, we need that in the space domain. We need to really think differently of the space domain, not how it's always been done, but how Billy Mitchell did it. And when he was talking about this, he had leaders say, hey, those aircraft are flying kites. We'll never use those in combat to bomb ships. Well, he was proven right.
If you had the chance to meet anyone from history, who would that be? Well, for me, one of the individuals I'd like to meet would be someone named William Lundrum Mitchell, also known as Billy Mitchell. And this is why he's on my 2024 reading list. Written by Emile Gauvreau, the book Billy Mitchell, Founder of Our Air Force and Prophet Without Honor, is an exceptional book. And I can tell you this book is one that I dove into because I am so interested in this character. He is someone that is just well ahead of his time. And you get that quickly as you read the book. Born in 1879 in Nice, France, and he passed away on the 19th of February, 1936. So a little bit, about 11 years before the Air Force became its own service. Although today he is regarded as the father of the United States Air Force. My three big takeaways from this book have actually very little to do with this book. My three big takeaways are space, cyberspace, and the information environment. Let me explain. So space is a relatively new warfighting domain, although not a brand new warfighting domain. And it's one that we continue to think about in ways of the past, in more of an air, land, and sea model, in more of an enabling capability, vice what it really is today, which is a warfighting domain where actions, command and control, everything we do as a modern military, in many ways our global economy relies on space, but we continue to think of it in a very linear way. Cyberspace, we consistently hear all the time about cybersecurity risks, things that are happening with our economy, hacktivists, nation states, cybersecurity threats and everything. But again, we continue to think of it in many ways, not everybody, but in many ways, as a linear way of doing business, and it's an enabling capability to the air, land, and sea domains in the Department of Defense. And then the information environment, the 7th Joint Warfighting Function, incredible capabilities there, but often we find ourselves reacting instead of being proactive in this information environment and punching instead of blocking. And so I'm worried that we haven't learned the lessons of Billy Mitchell and all the things he talks about. And this book really is something I hope many leaders read. And certainly I understand he's a man with flaws, and that's okay, but he still was ahead of his time in many ways. As early as 1920, General Billy Mitchell began sounding the alarms about an inevitable Japanese invasion from sea-based aircraft. He predicted as early as 1906, while an instructor at the Army Signal School in Fort Leonard Wood, Kansas, that future conflicts would take place in the air, not on the ground. Obviously, they can take place in both. One of his visions of the U.S. would meant massive, costly upgrades to the nation's Navy and, quite frankly, our Army. And so because of that and some of the insubordinate ways he went about business, he was shunned and not really listened to. And later he was court-martialed for his outspoken beliefs and things he said publicly, which, you can argue with his approach. But I think now, if you have the hindsight of an armchair quarterback, looking back, you can see in many ways he was accurate as well. He got the approval from the Secretary of War to do what we call Project B, which is an anti-ship bombing demonstration in February 1921, where he showed that we could use what then was referred to as flying kites, and he could use aircraft to bomb ships and in many ways hold the nation's Navy at risk. In 1925, his temporary appointment as Brigadier General was not renewed, and so he wasn't demoted necessarily. He just was never allowed to continue on as a Brigadier General, and he reverted back to his previous rank of Colonel. In 1925, he published a report. Just remember, 7 December 1941 is when Pearl Harbor happened. In 1925, he published a report called Wing Defense, revealing the vulnerability of Pearl Harbor to a surprise attack. He predicted that such an attack would effectively neutralize the Pacific Fleet as part of a Japanese invasion on the Philippines. He was right. Later that year, he was court-martialed for insubordination, accusing Army and Navy leaders of almost treasonable administration of the national defense for investing in warships. So you can learn a lot about this book. You can learn a lot as it relates to our new warfighting domains. You can also learn a lot as a leader on how to approach them, because his approach didn't necessarily win over the people that can make change and influence change at the right time. However, his forward thinking, his ability to foresee many of the actions of the future was exceptional. And he's, again, someone that I would just love to sit down with, have a conversation, and learn from, especially as it relates to where we are today in 2024 and beyond. And so, again, a remarkable leader, a man with flaws, but ahead of his times. And because of this, I placed Emile Gauvreau's book, Billy Mitchell, founder of our Air Force and Prophet Without Honor, on my 2024 reading list.